Today, friends, is the third day of Sivan. And let me tell you what's going on. We are in an extraordinary time right now because, as we all know, the giving of the Torah is not a one-time event. It actually happens every day, which is why the blessings that we make on the Torah invoke the present tense. When you said your morning blessings this morning, you bless God or thank God who gives the Torah, not who gave the Torah, but noten HaTorah. That's because it's an ongoing process of getting to know God deeper and deeper through the study of His Torah. That's every day. But Shavuot, it's a whole new level. Every year on Shavuot, a whole new level of understanding Torah, getting to know God opens up new vistas, new possibilities, new discoveries, never possible to be discovered before, become possible every year on Shavuos for the year to come, and then it gets deeper the year following. So it's all very much like every Yom Tov, very alive and very present and very real. So what is going on? So let me just give you a little bit of the timeline that we are currently in. So today's the third day of Sivan. What's going on? On the first day of Sivan, Rosh Chodesh, which this year was Sunday, but the original giving of the Torah, Rosh Chodesh, was a Monday. So on that day, our ancestors arrived at Mount Sinai 3,322 years ago. They arrived at Mount Sinai, and that was a day of silence. Nothing happened on the day they arrived, a day of incredible unity beyond words in preparation for the giving of the Torah. It was a day to let go of all the previous journeying. As incredible as the journey was till now, and I mean it spiritually, all the days of the counting of the Omer and the process of self-refinement that we undergo between Pesach and Shavuos. But when we come to Mount Sinai, we let go of all of that. Not in the sense of it's no longer meaningful. We let go in the sense of a readiness for a whole new connection. That's totally beyond whatever efforts we've invested till now. This is similar to, because I'm kind of asking, I'm pointing to a contradiction really. I'm saying, we're letting go something completely new, and yet I've insisted that it only comes after the effort of the spiritual growth invested till now. So what is it? Have we earned this, or is it a total gift? So this is similar to that which our sages say, that if someone says, I toiled, but I didn't find, don't believe them. Someone says, I didn't toil, and I found, don't believe them either. If someone says, I toiled and I found, believe them. So Chassidus explains, a find is something unexpected, like walking down the street and finding a treasure. But the paradox is you only find it if you've toiled and searched before. When you're searching for a treasure, the real and true treasure, then it comes unexpectedly, but only after the effort. It's like honor. Someone who pursues honor, honor will elude him or her. But if you don't want honor, then honor will come to you because you should be honored, so that others will be inspired by you. But you only earn that if you don't want it. So likewise, coming to Mount Sinai on Rosh Chodesh, which this year was a Sunday, nothing happened in terms of the preparation to receive the Torah. Nothing overtly happens because it's a day of silence, of letting go, of readiness to receive something totally beyond us. That was Sunday, Rosh Chodesh. The next day, the second day of Sivan, which was yesterday, an extraordinary thing happened. I want to read it to you. This is directly from the Chumash with a bit of basic commentary taken from Rashi. So Moses ascends Mount Sinai, and on this day he debates the angels, you know the story, and he vindicates. He rebuffs their arguments. They're arguing, God, why are you giving the Torah to mortal man? He'll only abuse it. And Moses defends, as it were, the Almighty, and heaven and the angels have to acquiesce. We talked about this in previous years. So that's done over the protest of the angels, and now God says to him these immortal words, so shall you say to the house of Jacob and relate to the children of Israel. Of course, why the double expression? House of Jacob, children of Israel, or sons of Israel, means the Jewish people. You know the answer. The house of Jacob are the women. And the sons of Israel are the men. God commands him to speak to the women first because they are, quote, predisposed towards spirituality. And therefore, when you speak to them, you don't have to go into a lot of detail. I get it. And speak to them first, because if they don't agree, God forbid, God, of course, knew you would, no point going to the men. So first to the women, and then speak to the men. And for the guys, vesaged, which implies spell it out in harsh terms, like make it very clear, because subtlety is often lost on the male. So you can be subtle and gentle to the women, and you ought to be, they understand, but to the men, spell it out. And then you shall say to everybody as follows. Speak in my name, tell the people, and that's what he did. This was all yesterday. Say these words. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians. And now I carried you swiftly as if on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Carrying you on eagle's wings when you encamped at the Red Sea. And God invokes the metaphor of an eagle because the eagle carries its young on its back, on its wings. Whereas all other birds carry their young in their claws. The reason? Because the other birds were afraid of the eagle, which soars above them, and so they protect their young below them. The eagle is not afraid of anyone because it soars above all birds, but it's only concerned with man and his deadly arrows. And so therefore she carries her young on her back. May the arrows pierce me, but not you. So too, when the Jews were encamped by the Red Sea, so God separated the Egyptians from the Jewish people with his divine clouds of glory, and all night the Egyptians were firing missiles and arrows, which the Almighty himself absorbed. So I've taken you to the Red Sea on the wings of eagles, as it were. And I brought you to me, choosing you amongst all the nations of the world to be my representative here on earth. So therefore, continuing this communication of yesterday, which is really the mission statement of the Jewish people, was articulated yesterday on the 2nd of Sivan. So now I'm asking, says God, will you enter into a permanent relationship with me? Be vigilant to heed my voice, keep my covenant. It's referring to the logical commandments, the supralogical commandments. And if you do so, you shall be for me, and these are the immortal words, V'yisem li segula mikol amim. You shall be a cherished treasure from all the nations. And moreover, mamleches koyanim b'goy kodesh, a kingdom of priests or nobles and a holy people. These are the words that you shall convey to the Jewish people, which you did, and that was yesterday. Today is the third day. What happens today is that today, on day 3, we were given the commandment not to ascend the mountain, to put a border on it. No one should ascend. And tomorrow, the next day, the commandment that husband and wife separate, and then 3 days from their separation, which was Shabbos, then the Torah to be given. So specifically today is the mitzvah not to ascend the mountain. Now just the symbolic significance of that is, aside from the physical, because God will descend on the mountain and no one should ascend it, The spiritual message here is God is saying, you're going to receive the Torah now. There's going to be an awesome revelation at Mount Sinai on the 6th of Sivan on Shabbos. Don't get the impression that what I'm asking you hereafter is to maintain this transcendent spiritual experience. No, it's all about bringing it all down. So don't ascend the mountain. That not ought to be your direction in life hereafter. Hope that's clear. And now a little more depth. If I can get some feedback from you that we understood what we were trying to say till now. I don't see a lot of faces. Yep, okay. All right, thank you for the thumbs up. Good. All right, friends, a little deeper into all of this. Shavuos, on this day, 3 events occur, 3 critical events in the span of our history. Because they all occur on the same day, obviously it means that they are all intrinsically connected. Number 1, as we just described, Shavuos is the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah through Moses. What's interesting also, I didn't read this quotation, but another very salient and important communication of God during this time is that God says to Moses these words. When I give the Torah, the people are going to see that you are my spokesman, and they'll believe in you forever. This is a parenthetic comment I'm sharing now, but it's very important. We believe in the words of Moses, not because he was a wonderful person and seemed trustworthy, although of course he was. We believe in Moses because at Sinai, God said, he's my man. And hereafter, until now, when he speaks in my name, you believe him because I'm saying so. It's a critical point that our faith is not based on an individual who convinces a small group, but then convinces a large group of a revelation that he had, which is the way all other faiths begin. Our faith begins, Judaism, with God's revelation to everyone, the masses. And it's recorded thereafter. It's called the Bible. The book of Deuteronomy records all of it, where it says, we were there. And that generation then gives it to their children, and so on, passed down to us. So again, the veracity or the authenticity of Moishe Rabbeinu, who speaks in God's name throughout the 40 years, conveying commandments. How do we know this is true? Because at Mount Sinai, God says, he speaks in my name and you hear it from me now. Important point to remember about how it all begins. It all begins with the all-witnessed Hashem's revelation at Sinai. All right, so the first event then, related to Shavuos, is the giving of the Torah, which is integral to Moishe Rabbeinu. As we say, and teach our children, one of the first things they learn, Torah tziv alonu Moishe, Meirasha kilas Yaakov. The Torah was commanded to us through Moishe, an eternal inheritance to the congregation of Jacob. First event. Second event. 1,000 years later, on Shavuos is the passing of King David, of David HaMelech. There's also a Shabbos. That year, Shavuos coincided with Shabbos, as was the original Shavuos. This year, not exactly, because it's Friday, which is really the first day. But many years it does. And he passes away, which means it's the culmination of his life also on Shavuos. Incidentally, I think I mentioned this. Because King David passed away on Shabbos, it was Shabbos afternoon. We don't wish each other good Shabbos afternoon. We do, of course, Friday night and Shabbos day, but as we approach the afternoon, time of the Mincha prayer, especially the later afternoon, we greet each other, but we don't say good Shabbos because in deference and acknowledgement and respect for the passing of King David. At any rate, that's the second event. And the third event in our history that occurred on Shavuos is very recently, relatively speaking, less than 300 years ago, 250 years ago, is the passing of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, also on Shavuot. So, the fact that these three great leaders all connect to the day of Shavuot, Moishe Rabbeinu, King David, and the Baal Shem Tov, that means that there is an intrinsic connection. And the connection is that the process, the great mission, the great objective set in motion by Moshe Rabbeinu continues to unfold and develop, reaching a pinnacle through and at the time of King David, and its final realization with the advent of the Hasidic movement founded by the Baal Shem Tov. Now let's explain that. Our sages tell us, King David actually says this, it's quoted in the Medrash as follows. King David said, even though you, God, have declared that the heaven belongs to God and earth was given to man. We actually quote that verse. It's in Tehillim and it's part of the Hallel. We sing it. Hashamayim la'Hashem v'oretz l'san livnei Adam. Many communities sing that paragraph. So even though you've made, that's how you created things at the outset, and that's the logical way things are expected to be. Heaven is heaven and earth is earth. Spirituality, infinite, that's beyond our ken. Our domain is the domain of the physical world, of the finite reality. We are limited and heaven is unlimited. Nonetheless, when you gave the Torah, you nullified that division. And you decreed, listen carefully to how the quote goes here. You decreed, O God, King David is talking, and quoted in the Midrash, that man ascend and heaven descend. Fusion. As it is written, and God descended on Mount Sinai, and Moses, representing man, ascended the mountain. This dual movement. I want you to know there's kind of a discrepancy here. You may have picked up on it in the Medrash. Let me press the rewind button and tell you again. So you nullified the decree and you decreed now with the giving of the Torah, this cosmic eternal change, that no longer are these two incompatible realities, physical creation and spiritual heaven. No longer. Rather, man ascend, the lower should ascend, and the upper should descend. So note, what's first here? The ascent or the descent? First is the ascent. But then, when he quotes scripture, that's actually what happened, the order is the reverse. God descends and then Moses ascends. You notice the discrepancy. In first identifying or stating the mission statement is first the ascent of man, and then spirituality descending. But in the practicality of it, first, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, God descends, and then he summons Moshe, and Moshe ascends. So, what began? The descent or the ascent? Answer. The mission statement is the ascent. It's all about us cultivating and elevating the world, as we will explain. That's the mission statement, which is why that's mentioned first. The ascent of man to God. And God's descent, however, is in order to empower that. It comes later because that's not the objective. It's mentioned secondary. And in the practical order of things, God descends first, allowing us to be able to develop the world and elevate it. Let me explain what I mean. Before the Torah was given again, the two worlds are incompatible. And that's logically so. Spirituality and physicality are incompatible. You can't get spiritual inside physical. Here's a cup. You can't put an idea in this cup. Trap the idea. Nonsense. I forgot there was coffee in it. Because ideas can't be put into cups. And that's true of ideas, and much more so infinite spirituality. So it's a logical division. But God says, it may be logical, but I'm nullifying it. And now it becomes possible. And that's my intention, is in fact the fusion of heaven and earth. So, I want you to, mitzvah by mitzvah, engage the world and sanctify it, imbue it with infinite, eternal godliness. Yes, you heard right, infinite. When this coffee is drunk, or the breakfast you had this morning, or the lunch you're about to have, and you make a bracha over it, and that's kosher, of course, that's an eternal connection, forever. The physical part, of course, is transient and temporary. You have to eat again soon. But you've unlocked, in that physical moment, eternal value. You've wired and connected that time and place with God, and nothing in the world can dislodge it. You've imbued the physical with infinite, eternal sanctity. That's what every mitzvah does. But we can only do that because God has made himself accessible in creation, in the physical world. So let's go deeper now. Physicality and spirituality are incompatible. I mean, how do you get infinite into finite? It's a finite moment or it's infinite? It's beyond time or it's time. How do you have time and beyond time at the same time? The answer is God's beyond infinite, God's beyond finite. He's the equal source of both. And therefore, holiness and the profane and the mundane can become one. I'm saying there are three realities. There's finite, infinite God, or physical, spiritual God. At Sinai, the very I of God, that's how the Ten Commandments begin. Anochi, I, my very essence, beyond heaven, beyond earth. I am now making accessible to you, that you mitzvah by mitzvah can touch me. And I'm making my accessibility here in this world. So please note this, consider this. Our sages tell us that when God said, I'm God, your Lord, at Sinai, it was a great voice. The scripture says it was a great voice. Koil Gadol, a great voice that did not end. What does it mean it was a great voice that didn't end? So one of the explanations is given by our sages, it had no echo. The voice had no echo, which is nice, but what's that got to do with anything? But the answer is, what does an echo mean? An echo is where the sound waves are not absorbed by the object before which the sound is projected, and it bounces back. Truth is, there's always an echo if you're in a room, but it's so subtle you don't pick it up. Depending on how close you are to the object and what the object is made of, how effectively absorbs the sound or repels it. There's always some subtle echo. But here there's no echo. What is the spiritual meaning? God's voice spiritually now permeates all of creation. So now latent within creation is the very eye of God waiting for you and I to access mitzvah by mitzvah. So now the mission is man's ascent. Develop the world, eat, engage, live, do mitzvahs, and access that divine spark or divine essence and sanctify the world. That's the mission, which is why that's how the statement, the Medrash begins. When God nullifies the decree, he says, and man, you will ascend, and I will ascend because my descent is going to empower the work. Simple language. The moment at Sinai, the potential to elevate and spiritualize the world begins. But then begins the whole process, mitzvah by mitzvah, of doing so. And again, that becomes possible because the very I, the very essence of God, is revealed at Sinai, never revealed before. The forefathers had a relationship with God, but it was a transcendent spiritual one. They didn't really connect to the I, the essence of God. They connected to his divine light and revelation. And so they were otherworldly and they were shepherds and spent most of the time in meditation and transcendence, at least whenever they could. That all changes radically. We're going to go to Israel and be farmers and engage in commerce and be a light unto the nations. It's now about engagement, not transcendence. And engagement is possible because the eye of God is accessible, descended as it were, became locked into creation so that we can unlock it. And the key is the mitzvah. Every mitzvah unlocks the essential presence of God present in all things. And so, as mentioned, there was no echo because God's presence permeates everything. And our sages say also that at the moment when God uttered actually it was the first commandment, the first two, no bird twittered, no ox lowed, to the word Lowed. All of creation for a moment was like zapped with the very essence of God, and then it recedes kind of to the very inner concealed core of creation, and we, mitzvah by mitzvah, access it and reveal it here within creation. So the creation becomes at once eternal and remaining creation, suffused with the essence of God. All right, hope we're clear. So that process begins when? From the giving of the Torah going forward. The giving of the Torah empowers the mission. It now becomes possible to reveal God within time and space and objects and relationships. But then the process, mitzvah by mitzvah, begins, reaching a significant culminative state with King David. Why King David? King David represents a significant stage of our development of the world, our performance of mitzvahs, spiritualizing, sanctifying nature, mitzvah by mitzvah, making nature eternally valuable, eternally precious. For in engaging nature in a mitzvah way, we make this moment a divine moment. So back to our breakfast. Breakfast can be, at best, just a transient thing we've got to do. Otherwise, we're going to not be able to function. And I don't want to be graphic at what happens soon after breakfast, preparation for the next meal. Animals eat too. It could be just that. Just a question of survival. It could also be a nuisance. If you're in a hurry, you've got to grab your breakfast. Or at best, survival. Or actually, a moment that you enjoy, great coffee and a healthy breakfast. What's a healthy breakfast? I have no clue. No, I'm just kidding. Not a Danish. That's beautiful, but you got to do it again tomorrow. You got to eat lunch, and it comes and goes, and it had its price, weight, cavities, whatever. You get the drift. Or that simple breakfast can be an eternal moment. A connection to God forged, that's forever. With the food, the cup, the place, the table at which you enjoyed your breakfast. That's if we engage in it in a godly way, in a mitzvah way, as per the instructions given to us at Sinai. So our life can be existence or really living, really meaningful, mindful. Not just mindful because I'm in and aware of the moment, but even when I move on to the next moment, this moment remains forever. And I carry it with me. And the objects with which I did the mitzvah are forever sanctified. The physical eye doesn't see it. We will one day, but the effect happens. All right. So I'm saying that this culminates, in a way, during the tenure or the epoch of King David. Why? Two things. Number one, King David is the first, rephrase that. King David begins the Davidic dynasty of kingship, Malchus. There was a Jewish king before him, King Saul, from the tribe of Benjamin. And there were other kings in our history from other tribes, but the true legitimate kings, once King David appeared, are his descendants from the tribe of Judah. This was already foretold or stated by Jacob when he blessed his children before he died. He said, the scepter has been handed to Judah, and it shall not depart from him. There'll always be an individual worthy of being the Jewish king at that time, including Mashiach, who is likewise a descendant of Judah and of King David and of the tribe of Judah. So what's kingship? Kingship, the relationship between the subjects and the king, is somewhat paradoxical. On the one hand, there is no relationship like it, in the sense that it's total. The king owns the people. And a king-subject relationship demands absolute surrender. So much so that the law is, if a king would ask you to go from one place to another and you don't, that's a capital offense. What have you done? You didn't go. Did you undermine the nation? You didn't start a rebellion. You're not joining the enemy. The point is, if you can say no, you don't have a king. He's not your king, period. You've rejected him totally because it is a total relationship. The king owns the people. He owns the country. There's no relationship like it. Parents don't own their children. They're entrusted to us. Teachers don't own their disciples. They have this responsibility to teach. It's only limited to the classroom. But even parent-child, which is a forever relationship, at no point did we own them. We're responsible because we brought them into the world, but they're not ours. But the king owns the people. Now, the flip side, the paradox is, how did he get to own them? Because the people gave themselves to him. Someone comes along and says, I'm your king, I own you. Well, he's a lunatic. If he pulls out a gun and has an army behind him, he's a dictator. He's a despot. Communism was supposed to be by the people, and the people, of course, was the greatest possible despotic rule in history from its very beginnings. You don't want? We imprison you and kill you. That's not king. So, and that's not leadership, because true leadership is really this king-subject relationship in various models. What I'm saying is this, that the king-subject relationship is total, but it can only happen if the people voluntarily give themselves. You can't take it from them. They have to give it. And what are we giving? We're giving ourselves totally. And if we don't, it doesn't happen. So the giving of self totally to the king, who in Judaism represents the divine, is the culmination of the second stage, which happened post giving of the Torah. Our elevation, devotion, development, where every aspect of our lives is a reflection of we are subjects of the king. That ought to be a Jewish life. Everything I do, I eat Jewishly, I sleep Jewishly, I love Jewishly, I wake up, I engage in business. The king subject is in every aspect of the subject's life. It's reflective of kingship, of the nation, of the state. But again, it can only come if you voluntarily give it. And when you don't, it doesn't happen. So what happens in stage 2? The empowerment to develop the world happened in stage 1. But the actual development and surrender and revealing godliness in every aspect of creation, which is what the mitzvahs are all about, to reveal and sanctify everything in the world, that happens in stage 2, reaching its culmination in King David, symbolically of a people in total surrender to the king who represents the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be he. Coming, here's the key point, coming from the people. Is this clear? Coming from the people. The second related thing is, was that clear, friends? Response? Yep, good. The second related point is that King David is the one responsible for the building of the temple. True, his son, King Solomon, built it, but it's called King David's. And that's so graphically illustrated when the temple was built. King David had died already. God said, you won't build it because you're the warrior. It would be your son, Solomon, Shlomo, Shalom, peace, that he would build the temple. Nonetheless, when the temple was built, the doors to the sanctuary would not open, so that no service could begin. King Solomon prays, and they just, despite every attempt, they remained shut fast until King Solomon invokes the merit of his father, King David, and then they simply open of their own accord. God is saying that this is built as a result of King David's battles, his battles with conquering the resistance of the world to God and developing and refining it. That's how we have a temple. Now, what's the temple? The temple, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem now, is a place where the physical earth is sanctified forever. Unlike the sanctuary built by Moses. So this was also a house of God, but as you all know, it was a temporary house, a collapsible structure. And consider this. They erected it wherever it was, stood for how many years it did, and then dismantled and moved to the next place. The ground upon which it had stood is no longer sacred, because the sanctuary was like a beam of divine light coming from above to below. And it just moved wherever the beam was directed. Wherever they put it together, so the light came down. Not so the Holy Temple. The light's from within, from below to above. So that even when the temple is destroyed, that place remains forever sacred. So that's so symbolic of this, the culminating stage of the development of the physical world, eternally holy. It's tangible in the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple. And furthermore, the house, when it stood, which is the prototype for the whole mission, to make this world a home for God. So what's a home? A home is a place that is reflective. It's not just bricks and mortar. And a place of function, where you sleep, where you eat, where you shower, where you bathe, where you sleep. It's more than a place of function. That's a hotel. It's somebody else's house. If they let you in and you have a kind neighbor, you can do the same thing there. The home is, it reflects you. The choice of all of these functional pieces. What kind of faucet, what color, how you decorate it, every detail reflects you. So the home is a reflection of you, your family, your spouse. The relationship is what the home is reflective of. The people who live there. So the temple was reflective forever. That ground forever is reflective of the relationship between God and his people, between God and the world. The world is reflective of it because we have performed mitzvahs of the world, sanctified it so that it reflects. It becomes the home for God, reflective of its relationship with us, the Jewish people, and by extension, all humanity. In summary, King David represents stage 2. Stage 2 is our work in elevating the world, making the physical earth, the bricks, the mortar forever sacred. And that's also reflective in this notion of king, subject. It's not the king that creates the relationship. Parents create the relationship with children. First comes parents, they come together, produce the child. Teachers create the atmosphere and the whole dynamic of the classroom. It starts with the teacher and the kids learn and respond. Not so king subject. It starts by the people. We want you to be our king and we devote ourselves to you. So it's all from below to above. So Sinai, stage 1, is above to below. Then begins from below to above. And when does it culminate? King David, for the 2 reasons we said, the idea of kingship and the Holy Temple really pointing to the same thing, the sanctification of earthliness in its elevation and reaching out and connection to God. Are we clear? That's stage 2. Yep. Stage 3, the Baal Shem Tov. the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov comes now before with the revelation of Chassidus, before Mashiach comes. To explain this, we need more time than we have allotted to us. So, but I will put it to you this way and hope that I'm successful in conveying the idea. The Baal Shem Tov is at once the simultaneous fusion of both movements, above to below and below to above, and each one of them on an unprecedented level. How so? The Baal Shem Tov showed us how to see God in the minutiae of life. One of his great seminal teachings, which you're all familiar with and now everybody's embraced, and it's become one of the foundational teachings of Judaism for everyone, thank God, is divine providence. It's a very novel idea. It's a novel idea that divine providence extends to the minutiae of life, God's direct active involvement. In fact, the idea was opposed when the Baal Shem Tov first presented it, because a superficial reading of Torah, particularly the Rambam, who speaks about divine providence, the Rambam actually says, the one who thinks that, the little minutiae details that occur in life are directed by God alone is a fool. In fact, the Rambam says there's many levels of providence. This may be shocking to you, but he says the following: direct hashgacha pratis, individual divine providence, only extends to the righteous. The wicked, God abandons to the whims of nature. That's a shocking statement. Whims of nature? We're also familiar with the notion of divine providence extending to everything. Yeah, that's what the Rambam says. So the Rebbe actually reconciles, based on the teaching of the Mittel Rebbe, what the Rambam says and what the Baal Shem Tov has now revealed. And briefly, it is this. In terms of where you can see and feel the presence of God, that's what the Rambam speaks about. You look at a tzaddik, you just see holiness in all of the details of his life, and you can see the cause and effect in everything. It's transparent. For the wicked, it's concealed, but present. That's the big revolution of the Baal Shem Tov. That God's just as involved in our lives as he is in the lives of the righteous and the saintly, and not just our lives, but in the words of the Baal Shem Tov, when the wind blows and a leaf is blown down the street and comes to rest, and a little worm, it's a beautiful song of Avram Fried, immortalized. It's not his song, it's a song of Yom Tov Erlich. One day I'll tell you the story of Yom Tov Erlich. It's a beautiful story. Composer of many Yiddish songs during the war years and later. And then a little worm finds shelter from the blazing sun under that leaf, orchestrated by God alone. So the Rambam in Reconciliation is speaking about where it's obvious and where it's not obvious. But the Baal Shem Tov taught us to see God where he's not obvious. Taught us to see divine providence in nature, in the little things in our life, and taught us how to be cognizant and aware and to see the oneness of God in everything. He opened our eyes to seeing what nature is. The whole idea of constant creation, as we learn in Chassidus. God's constant, active, direct involvement in bringing into being everything, every moment. That the mind can grasp this and actually see it. In the study of Chassidus, it changes the way we see the world and everything about us, and our responses to everything, and all our relationships. So this is, what am I pointing to? From below to above, we are seeing in our everyday lives, we're seeing the sanctity of it all, the divinity of it all, the providence of it all. And the Rebbe told us now, open your eyes and you'll see we're on the threshold of redemption, no less. Just one little thin veil separating us from God's full-blown revelation. In the words of Manis Friedman, we are 1 foot in exile and 1 foot in redemption, which is why it's such a confusing time. No generation before us has been this way. Of course. So again, the Baal Shem Tov is, I want to point to the two movements. On the one hand, we are seeing, and science is all part of this. Science and quantum physics and all of its teachings is all making us see the divinity in creation itself. That's from below to above. At the same time that Baal Shem Tov was above to below. Because how did he teach these teachings? It was through Torah, through a revelation of an insight explaining a verse, as we are learning in Hasidus, the quotations, the sources, the verses, all of this is discovered through the study of Torah, which is God's gift to us. And the Baal Shem Tov's giving a Torah. The Rebbe is saying a discourse with his eyes closed and revealing these incredible truths. But when we learn the discourse, what happens in that discourse? We go there and see this in the world. When we take this with us into our daily life, so it's the fusion of both. It's both this revelation from above to below. It's a teaching of Torah. It's deep Hasidus. But the end result is below to above. It completely pulls back the veil that we can see on all of life itself. There's so much more to this, how Hasidus is the fusion of transcendence and immanence. That's what Hasidus teaches. Be beyond the world and within the world at the same time. Unique to the teachings of Hasidus. Before Hasidus was one or the other. Either you were the ascetic and you lived cloistered in the house of study, in the house of worship, the yeshiva of the shul, or you were the business person, the farmer engaged in the world. Before Hasidus, they davened in different shuls in Europe. There was the synagogue for the scholars and the synagogue for the cobblers and the synagogue for the butchers. And they hardly did the twain meet. Shidduchim only happened if you could afford it, and then the scholar would marry his daughter to your not to your son. The son of the scholar would marry the daughter of the butcher if the butcher could afford to pay the son to keep learning. That was the whole extent of the social interaction. Baal Shem Tov tore down these barriers completely. They're not these two worlds, but I started to say something else. I just got distracted. So I was thinking of some stories. What was you saying? No, before that, just before that. Yes, transcendence and immanence. So before the Baal Shem Tov, it was two worlds. You were the scholar or you were the man of the field, the Am Ha'aretz, people of the earth. And Hasidus comes along, and it's so exquisitely expressed in our generation. It's both simultaneously. This is what's demanded of us and possible of us, and this is what we are embodying. Namely, on the one hand, fully engaged in the world and technology and out there, shlichus, one expression of it, but all of us, using Zoom, but in general, being out in the world at the same time that you're part of the world, you're not part of the world. You bring sanctity and holiness wherever you go. You're in and you're without. You're transcendent and you're within. Unprecedentedly, the engagement with the world Baal Shem Tov taught, and in an embrace of the simple Jew. It's so many layers to all of this, but I'm kind of melding them all together. But it's the idea of being out there in the world fully savvy and aware and part of it, but the business world, whatever the world, science, whatever it is. And while you're there, this unworldliness, you're bringing this godliness. That's what tznius is. This is embodied in the woman who is the forefront of redemption. Tznius doesn't mean that you're locked up in your house. Shluchis, right, is forever changed that model. King David said, Kol kvuda bas melech pnima, the glory of the king's daughter is inward. So it's understood till now to mean inward. She's inside and that's it, not on display. That hasn't changed. She's never on display. But what's happening now is the woman is out there in spreading godliness in the world and transforming the world, but in such a way that there's this aura of transcendence and of tznius, of modesty, if you want to have a better word, that conceals something that is a mystery, and it is a mystery because God is a mystery. She brings the mystery and the divinity to every engagement, every encounter of life. That needs further treatment in its own right. At any rate, conclusion, wrapping it all up. So Shavuos is 3 things happen on Shavuos, because there are 3 stages. Moishe Rabbeinu, heaven coming down. David HaMelech, King David, the culmination of the next stage, the ascent, the development of man to God, culminating in the Beis Hamikdash and the notion of sovereignty, of Malchus, and then the exquisite fusion of the two, both simultaneously, transcendence and immanence, from below to above and above to below, as revealed by the Baal Shem Tov, and ever increasing and deeper and more powerful ways by the Rebbeim after him, up to our Rebbe as it continues in ever greater measure. And a final word, again quoting Rabbi Manis Friedman, who makes the observation. Today, as we stand on the threshold of redemption, this whole upheaval in the world this whole shakeup is clearly integral to it all. What's emerged? I was going to talk about Shavuos. In our respective homes, the focus, friends, now is on each and every one of us individually. The great, grand leaders and the magnificent accomplishments have all been set into place. And now it's you and I, the foot soldier, so-called little guy, but nothing is little for God. We're all everything to carry out the final implementation of the grand mission, live Yiddishkeit and spread it. Starting with our own homes, pointing to our own individual intrinsic value, this whole separation, the social distancing, yes, you, the focus on the individual, pointing to the individual's unique role, each one of us in his indispensable role in the completion of the task that has been entrusted to us and may be fulfilled without delay. Amen, today. So about Shavuos, friends, so what's going to happen right now, I don't know. Because as things stand, in fact, I'm having a meeting with Itchy now, and we're going to discuss what happens in MTC, but there's a severe limitation because the government is only allowing, we want to respect this obviously, 10 people to gather. So to read the Torah, you need 10 adult men. So that puts a severe limitation on the nature of these gatherings. So we'll let you know. I will say this. If you are able, this can happen when there are many homes adjacent and many yards together. So you can have a minyan in one yard and people in other yards listening. As long as there's 10 in each locale, Hampstead doesn't work that well, but certainly in other neighborhoods. If you can be part of such a minyan on Shavuos, do so. Because whatever we'll be able to do will be, some very limited to kind of a rotational system based only on limited to 10 people. All to say, we'll be sending you an email with whatever we're going to be doing. But regardless of what we send, if you can attend such a thing, you live in that neighborhood where that's possible, then that would be your best choice, especially if you have children in a yard listening to the Torah being read in an adjacent yard, which we can't do in MPC's parking lot, I don't think. Okay, so stay tuned. Good seeing everybody, and have a wonderful day. We'll meet you again, not Friday at 5, God willing, but Thursday at 5 with a very special surprise. Thursday at 5, something special, which I believe you will enjoy, and we'll see you. It's a surprise, so we'll see you then. Have a great and wonderful day. Thanks for joining. I'll unmute you so you can talk amongst each other. I don't know why I'm having a hard time doing this. Because where is the unmute? It used to say unmute quite clearly, and now it doesn't appear. Nash is not around. Hang on, maybe. No, okay, let's.
Is that on the top left? Top left?
Mute all, but not.
Press it again.
Huh?
Press that again. Mute all, press it
Yeah, I
again.
pressed it again. Press it left, press it right. Okay. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Yeah. Okay, that's it. So you can unmute yourselves, friends. Questions, comments, talk about amongst yourselves. You have to do it yourself. I can actually do it. I can unmute you individually. Chaya, just got unmuted. Bela, muted. Sarah, you haven't said a word. Oh.
You're not unmuted.
No, you got to do it yourself, Sarah. I can't not let me. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Gilda, you want to say something? A question? Please go ahead. Let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Just a very quick question.
Turn off
Is it
FaceTime.
appropriate?
That's why you have
Turn off
Is it
FaceTime.
appropriate to say? Oh, am I not?
1 minute. Not Facebook. Stop live stream. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much for this. I just wanted to know: is it appropriate to greet someone on Shavuos with a Chag Sameach?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Of course.
Throughout Shavuos.
cancel.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything, Rabbi, and an early Chag Sameach to everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Rabbi,
Yes, Sarah.
when do we read the Megillat Ruth?
The custom is the first day of Shavuot. When? Anytime during the day.
Okay.
Yep. I'm muting you all manually.
Akdamos is said the first day, and Ruth is said the second day, or the first day.
You know what? We don't say Ruth. I think Akdamos is definitely the first day.
Yeah, I think Ruth is the second day,
You
maybe.
could be right. I'm sorry. Chabad doesn't say it, so you could be right.
Oh, you don't say it.
It's not like we don't say it. It's not like institutionalized custom.
Okay, I didn't know.
You definitely learn it. You could be right on that.
I just heard that.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
I can tell you in a second.
Something, Rabbi New.
Yes,
I just wanted to ask you something.
please.
Is imminence have anything to do with when you're describing imminence? Can you describe innerness as an innerness of a person, not just an imminence, let's say, of Torah texts like Midrash, Haggadah, Talmud, like an imminence of God in the world? But it doesn't have anything to do with an innerness, developing an
Definitely
innerness.
does.
Could you comment on this just a little bit more?
Just 1 second. Oh, you will. I'm sorry. 1 second. I just want to be clear on something. Yes, it is the second day of Shavuot. So some people say it. Chabad says it's Shavuos night. We say Shavuos night in the Tikkun. And there's also a custom to be done on the second day. So yes, you're right. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that as everyone
You
was
want to
healed,
answer the question? Go on.
as everyone was healed on Shavuos, may Hashem heal everybody. Everybody should
Right.
be healthy, well, and
Yes.
should have goodness from everyone. All
We're
Klal
going to talk about
Yisrael.
that in our address.
Yeah.
Rachel, there you are. Good to see you. Oh, I just
Thank
muted you. But there's a question.
Can you address?
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to
Go
unmute. Okay.
I I have a question.
I wanted to answer first. Hang on, Rachel. Somebody else before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could
so
I
the-
address that innerness and imminence?
Yeah, so by imminence, we meant unlocking the presence of God that's within creation. Not meditating and going to a level that is otherworldly, but by eating, sleeping, and engaging in physical things in a godly way. That's what I mean by imminence.
Okay.
So when we pray, for example, that's transcendent. When we eat our Shabbos meal, that's imminence. That's engaging in a godly way within, not by going beyond. Okay?
Thank you, yes.
My question is a little bit more philosophical. I've been contemplating the idea of holiness.
Sorry?
I've been contemplating the idea of holiness.
Yeah.
And you've addressed it today. And I understood everything that you said, and I agree with you. But at the same time, I'm thinking God is created the world. God is holy. So since he is the force behind all of creation, then naturally everything should be holy, because nothing would exist without him. So
Okay, so the answer is you're right. But in order to access the holiness in it, we have to fulfill the divine commandment. So just eating like that, you've not revealed the holiness. It's hidden. The word olam, laha'alim, to hide. So what's going to reveal the holiness in your piece of bread or your toast or your fruit or your granola bar? What's going to reveal the holiness in time? Time is a physical thing. What's going to reveal the holiness in your relationship, in intimacy? What's going to reveal holiness in the other aspects of life? When you engage in all of these things, as God tells us in the Torah, mikveh and intimacy, and kosher with food, and Shabbat with time, etc., that's the key to unlock the holiness. Otherwise, it just remains concealment.
Okay, so basically our job here on earth is to reveal the holiness. It's not, God is there.
That's right.
It's not the idea of transcend, God is coming down is an idea, but basically God is there because
right.
he's in.
So at Sinai, when we say God came down, it means he was always there. But now he made himself accessible through the mitzvah to actually sanctify the world. The forefathers, the Avot, didn't change the world. Their spirituality was meditative, was otherworldly. They couldn't take a physical object and make a mezuzah or tefillin, and that now becomes forever holy. Or take a physical place, like the Beit HaMikdash, that's holy. Or take time like Shabbat and make the day actually holy. Their whole spirituality was spiritual. But we have more than spirituality. We have godliness. It's more than spirituality. It's the fusion of the finite and the infinite, where the finite itself becomes forever changed and sacred, because we have unlocked the essence of God that is now accessible, always was there, you're right, but now accessible with the giving of the Torah thereafter.
Yeah, thank you very much. So
Okay.
through conscious intention, we basically reveal holiness.
By what?
Through conscious intention, we reveal godliness in the world.
Again, the intention is not enough. It has to be a physical act that engages that thing in a godly way. That's what the mitzvahs are all about, the details of action. Kosher is not an idea, and Shabbos is not an idea. It's a physical. Just 1 second. Hello? Yeah, I forgot the shift finishes at 12. I meant 12:30. I'm coming, almost finished the shift. Huh? It's going to finish in 5 minutes. Okay. Right. So it's the emphasis is on the physical action, because the physical action that engages the physical object and touches the divinity within and reveals it. So intention is important, but intention is secondary to the actual adherence to Shabbat and Kashrut and Mikveh and all of the myriads of details of mitzvot, because it's those details that actually touch the physical detail of the world and bring out the godliness that's within it. And therefore, ha'maaseh hu ha'ikar. The main thing is the action. All right, friends, I'm going to go.
Thank you very much.
Rabbi, you have one question.
Yes, okay.
If we're alone, and we don't have
If what?
If we're alone, as a woman, and we don't have a place to go to listen to the 10 Commandments, we read it ourselves?
At home, yes, yeah.
And is there a time where we
Anytime
have
during
to
the
read
day
it?
on Friday.
Anytime on
And
Friday?
there's plenty of men that can't go to a shul either.
I know.
So yes, that's what you should do.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Do you get the MTC?
Yeah, the